I'm Denise Griffitts, and this is your partner in Success Radio. Remember one thing about democracy: we can have anything we want, and at the same time, we always end up with exactly what we deserve. That's Edward Albee. And that's the line that my guest today, Chip Webster, built a movement around. Chip spent 25 years in boardrooms mentoring CEOs, and then he did something most people in his position just don't do. He got in the car and he drove to every single state in the country. You know why? To listen to what's actually worrying Americans. And our sponsor today is this is a book that I think is so important. It's called What's Right with America and How We Can Keep It That Way. From the vision of our founding fathers to the resilience and determination that have shaped our history, What's Right with America explores what makes this country uniquely capable of thriving in times of change, and we see it all the time. With inspiring stories and thought provoking analysis, authors Paul Johnson and Larry Aldrich reveal how America's prosperity is rooted in more than just economic might. It's grounded in values like freedom, individual empowerment, and deep commitment to justice and liberty. And this book is available on Amazon and Audible, and I highly recommend it. Now, back to my guest. Before the break, I told you that my guest spent months crossing the country just to listen, and here's the rest of the story. Chip spent over 25 years leading Vistage, Florida, the world's premier CEO peer advisory organization, mentoring executives through growth and turnaround and serving on boards, including Discount Auto Parts and Higher Velocity. And today, he chairs the board of Tampa Bay Watch. But a few years ago, he turned that leadership experience towards a different mission, and that's rebuilding civic trust. This is an important book, and I hope y'all will listen to us. He traveled to every state, listening to Americans talk about where the country's headed, and what he heard led him to found Unity in Service and write the book that is on my desk right now, Unity in Service, A Pathway to Responsible Citizenship. And it's a case for bridging our divides through volunteerism and national service. Chip, welcome to your partner in Success Radio, and thank you for sharing your book with me.
Thank you, Denise. Good to hear your voice again.
It's been a while, hasn't it? We did our
Yeah,
pre-interview quite a long time ago.
right.
But you know what? I always keep those recordings so I remember what we talked about, and I've got the book, so I'm smarter than I look. But let's talk about that Albee quote. It's important, and that's basically the whole premise of your work.
Well, I think that what happens when things are going really well, we see this within wealthy families, and we see this in companies. My experience was Sears. When I joined Sears while working in college, they were the number one retailer in the world by 2.5 times. They dominated um, the retail space, and
And
not
now
just
they're
in the way,
gone. They're
and now
completely
they're
dead,
gone.
aren't they? Yeah, that was so sad.
And success was the enemy. They started focusing on, the bureaucracy. We built the what was considered the tallest building in the world at the time. It was an edifice to the bureaucracy of Sears and to the CEO. We used to call it, well, we just referred to the chairman of the board of his that was his building, not the customer's building.
Oh,
And that was the beginning of the end. And when you take your mind off of your responsibility, which was finding the right products, getting to the right products to Des Moines, Iowa, and to Denver, Colorado, and Biloxi, Mississippi, and you focus on building the building and what kind of plants are in the lobby and what kind of Alexander Calder mobile you have in the lobby, you're focused on the wrong thing. And I think that happens with government when things are going well is when we make the worst decision. In fact, I found that in my life sometimes when I was really bringing in the money, I made some dumb mistakes, what that I wouldn't have made if I was still scratching. And I think that success is the enemy, and that when a nation is done so well for so long, and my parents uh, grew up in the Depression. My parents made me work, but a lot of my friends' parents said, I don't want my kids to have to work as hard as I did. And that was the breakdown because we all need to work. We all need to take responsibility. And Otherwise, you take it for granted. And I think that's what's happened, is that people don't realize it's our democracy, it's our government, and when you look at election turnout, it's very telling. I was talking to a politician yesterday who said, I didn't realize it, but in New York, when Mandavi got elected, only 7% of the people turned out.
I found that whole election just puzzling in so
Yes.
many ways.
And when OAC got elected, only 13% showed up. When historically, over the last several decades, somewhere between 59 and 68% of the people vote for president. In the off year elections, it's less than 50%, or usually around 40 to 45%. So Congress is being elected by less than half of the people, and local elections, as we just discussed, are even worse. And um, yeah, we get the government we deserve because we don't get engaged. It's our country, and it's up to us to put the right people on the bus in the right seats who have a commitment to good stewardship of our country, of our taxes we pay. And when you see the inefficiencies and the corruption and the stealing of some of the NGOs, we tolerate that. And guess what? It's our fault. When I would be in an RV park and start talking to somebody, and we'd start out talking about where you get your tires and what's been your favorite RV park, and then it would kind of drift into what was going on in the country. I'd say, well, it's our fault, and they'd look at me like I had two heads.
No, I agree with you. It is absolutely our fault. If we're not standing up and saying this is unacceptable and doing something about it, whether it's at the voting booth or calling your congressman, which I admit is completely a waste of time, but you've got to try to do something. You have to show up. You have to be aware. You can't just go, well, I didn't vote because there was no point in it. Don't talk to me. We're done. Don't talk to me.
Well, and then what's sad is in the pre-elections, when I'm trying to think of when you vote for who's going to run for your office, for your party, primaries, and the primary,
Primaries, right?
yeah, get very little turnout, and the only people that turn out are the extremes. So we get these candidates that are some of them should be in prison, um, and then we wonder why we end up with these people in office. And when you listen to some of them, you were talking earlier about watching people's behavior, not what they say, what do they do, and the disconnect is pretty dramatic, and we tolerate that. And the
And they
only
get by with it. They get by with it all the time,
Sure,
and a lot of that is the media propaganda. I'm just gonna say it.
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
you know, I was
horrible.
I was sitting at a Thanksgiving meal with some good friends, have a little bit different political view than I, who work for major media outlets. I won't say who they are, um, but you hear the name every day, multiple
Mhm.
times a day. And
I'm gonna go with CNN.
well, no comment. And it was interesting. I said, you guys claim to be very centrist and non-biased, but how do you do that? You're human. When you and I hear information, we run it through our brains, and automatically we have our own slant because we're human. Well, we don't do that. We're just unbiased. And I thought,
Mhm.
I've been looking at your outlet. Right? Unbiased is not what I would describe. So
Mhm.
there's an
And
arrogance.
well, that and I guess they really believe it to be able to say that and look you in the eye.
Yeah, I mean, these are good friends, sitting around the table having a
Right.
nice Thanksgiving, talking about really interesting things. It was depressing.
It is. There in people's you know, the I'm gonna you mentioned Thanksgiving. I was always told as a kid you don't talk about certain things at Thanksgiving. One is politics, the other one is religion. And I
Yeah.
adhere to that religiously. The Thanksgiving is saying, no, thank you. We're not. And my friends, I'm always the host. I cook the turkey and I love making that meal, but nobody dares talk about that or football. Just don't even bring up football in my house. We're
Oh,
not turning
no.
it on. So you can talk about anything but those three things. So
Did you go to LSU?
no, no. I know a lot of people who did though.
Right, I was gonna say, that's football country.
Yeah, well, not for me. It really is. And one of my very dearest friends was Jim Tunney. He was known as the dean of NFL referees, and he passed away when he was 95. And I worked with him for about 10 years or longer. And he would try his best to explain to me the difference between a touchdown and a touchback, and I didn't care. I didn't want to know. He tried until the day he died. Denise, you got to understand this. No, I really don't. He did not understand why I didn't love football. God bless him. I miss him.
Uh, he had a good reputation.
He really did. One, and I'll tell you this just because we both mentioned it, but one of his very dear friends was, of all people, Frank Sinatra.
Mm.
And he was a speaker. Jim was a speaker later in life, and he was a big, big, well-known speaker. And he was at a convention, I think, in Las Vegas, and he saw that Frank Sinatra was there as a headliner or something. I don't know, a long time ago. And he ran to ran somewhere and he bought an album and then he grabbed one of those white phones and
Yeah.
he said, "Can I speak to Frank Sinatra's suite?" And they got, "No, of course you can't." He said, "Okay, I'm Jim Tunney. I don't want to meet him. I don't want to get in his way. I would just love for him to sign this album cover." And all of a sudden he heard, "Jim Tunney, please come to this phone, blah, blah, blah." And he picked up the phone. This guy said, "Where are you?" And he's told him where he was. And this guy comes running towards him. He was Frank Sinatra's manager. He said he wants to meet you. And he drags Jim Tunney over there. Frank Sinatra said, "Listen, I will not watch football unless you are on the field." And they became very good friends. And he worked with the widow, on golf, a lot of things to do with golf, I believe it was.
Well, when
But,
I was a kid living in Palm Springs and working at Canyon Country Club as a caddy, when the Rat Pack came through, Sinatra,
oh,
and
yeah.
I was paid to follow them and rake the traps because they never raked their traps when I used to see
It's,
them around town.
yeah, it's interesting group of people, but I'll never forget when he told me that story. I went, "Frank Sinatra? Really?"
Yeah.
So it stuck with me. But you do get to meet interesting people when you're traveling like he did all around the country. So what I would love to hear are some of the best stories or some of the most interesting stories that you met while you were going through all these states. I mean, what are the ones that just really, grabbed your mind and your memory and you can't forget them?
Well, are we talking political or just the beauty of the country?
All of it. What when I would
Okay.
love to travel like that. I can't. I have cats. You can't go
Yeah.
anywhere when you have cats.
Well,
But
you can put them in your RV and
eh,
travel with them. Put a
yeah,
sandbox in there and
I have done that actually before. So, but what did you hear? Because we hear the word polarization thrown around so much. So, what did you hear from people that was so important to you that showed up in this book?
well, I think, there's a wide variety of a lot of people just being totally out of touch and not engaged at all, and then others that are really worried. I heard everything from, "Don't worry, we've been in this before. We've had a civil war. We'll get out of this. No harm, no foul."
No,
And
no.
to, guess what? We are on the verge of a civil war. And when you listen to politicians say we got to fight each other, that is very incendiary. I mean, it's behavior that is not worthy of any leader to in a democracy. to talk about fighting the other side. When I was a kid, and when a presidential election, the loser would concede and say, congratulations, Mr. Kennedy. I'm here to help you be successful. Um, Now it's congratulations, Mr. Trump or Mr. Biden, and we're going to do everything we can to make you ineffective. What?
Yeah, I don't understand that either. I mean, we're supposed to all be gathering together for the betterment of our population, for, our country. That's not
Right.
happening. It's just not happening.
Well, what if you go back and read George Washington's farewell address? He warned us that political parties would be our destruction, would destroy us. That politicians would put party ahead of country. And it's evolved that way. It's been that way for a long time, but it's gotten worse. And, so instead of sitting down and talking and listening to each other, like Kennedy and who was the Speaker of the House? Not Kennedy, Reagan and
Right. And Mondale, I think it was in there at some point. I can't remember, but
yeah, Reagan. I'll think of it. Kind of a crusty old um, Speaker of the House. They used to have a beer every Friday and talk.
and that's as it should be. Because you're
Yes,
not going to get other points of view if you're sitting in your little, and you use this word a lot, your little silo, and you're not paying any attention to anything but your own people, the people who are talking and thinking the same way you do. That's not healthy.
it's a closed loop,
Right. That's
and
exactly right.
yeah, and what it tends to do, nothing's static. You're either getting more open-minded and more open to different perspectives and willing to negotiate and trust, or you're getting more closed-minded. And when we're in a silo, when we're in an echo chamber, you're getting your circle's getting tighter and tighter. One of the things we do as humans is we call what I call stacking. So if I know you voted for Biden, or if you voted for Harris, or if you voted for Trump, once I understand that, then I start stacking all these other traits onto you, which are not right. And
They're
so
really not. And I
and that,
I make it a point to talk to people who think like you, very differently politically than I do, and I find out that they're most often brilliant, thoughtful, caring individuals.
yeah, yeah,
So I don't have the nerve to hate them.
right. And guess what, Denise, we need each other.
We do.
And what I'm trying to do with unity and service is break down the barriers by asking people to discover what is their responsibility in a democracy. Vote, do your homework, vote for people, not vote for parties. And then secondly is breaking down barriers by volunteering together. You mentioned earlier that I'm on the Tampa Bay Watch board, and after one of my meetings a few months ago, one of my fellow members, who I have great respect for, really care about, who vote. I don't think she and I've ever voted the same way in the history of voting. But she said, what's really neat is we're all here working together on something bigger than ourselves. And it doesn't matter what our political views are. What matters is the health of the Bay and educating people about the Bay and doing our restoration projects. That's what matters. And that's what happens when a nation rallies together, like after 9/11 or certainly after Pearl Harbor.
And
All those
COVID, everybody was rallying around, everybody had Zoom fatigue
right,
during
right,
COVID.
right. And now it's back to business as usual. Let's divide and conquer. And if you go back and look at, and I'm not studying this in depth, so this is a very superficial observation. If you look at the way the communists operate, is they just keep dividing the population, so they hate each other, don't trust each other, and it's the old divide and conquer. And the reason I think volunteering, Habitat for Humanity, I coached soccer when my kids were small. Um, and I worked with people all across the board, but we're there to help the kids. Getting involved with something bigger than yourself that benefits your community, your state, your nation, the world is where we find that common ground and
And I love
finding.
what you're saying about volunteer habitat. Look, I would not, if I were able to, or old enough to vote for um, President Carter, I wouldn't have because I thought he was a very poor president. I still think it, but he had a heck of a heart.
Mhm. He when he was governor of Georgia, and I was running the Winnie the Pooh for President campaign for Sears and Disney, he endorsed Winnie the Pooh for President on WSB.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I need to dig up that video. I should have that in my library. But yeah, here's a guy with a great heart, um,
Did he really
good
did?
soul, but he was just naive. That's what we get over and over again, especially in international politics. We think that the Muslim community, the radical Muslim community, sees the world the way we see it. They
They do
don't.
not. No, they
They're
want to
no
kill
different
us.
than the kamikaze pilots
Right.
during World War II that gave up their lives to blow up a ship. These people do not care. They really do believe if they die trying to convert all of us or kill everybody who doesn't believe, they're going to go to heaven. And I forget how many virgins they're supposed to get.
72, I think, or a bunch of goats.
72.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, yeah. And the problem is that he thought they said virgins. It turned out it was vegans. But
Again, it's
but it,
not don't listen to them, watch them, and you can kind of
yeah.
listen, this has been going on for how 4,000 years? This is nothing new.
Yeah. No, I can't hear what you're saying or what you're doing.
Yep, I watch you. I always watch. And I wish more people would do that. They say, there's some incongruities going on, to be polite, going on here. Let me look a little bit deeper. And once you start looking deeper, you're like, oh, okay, he looks like a nice guy. He wears his suit well. He speaks well, but what he's talking about is not at all what he's doing. And once you
Right.
get to that point, things change.
And trust is the foundation of all relationships, family, community, nations, and our around the world. And when you don't have trust, you can't build anything. You can't fix anything. Everybody's trying to just defend themselves rather than move forward and work together. I mean, what's going on with NATO right now? We need, in my opinion, NATO to be a very healthy, um, united organization, and it's not for a lot of reasons. People didn't do what they said they were going to do. Um, they
And
start
let's not
criticizing each
forget
other.
about the money, the wealth
Yeah,
that they all
exactly.
gain.
Right, right. And it's unacceptable. And the only people that can change it is us,
And
us.
a way to do that, in my opinion, because I will not watch the news. I turned it off. God, I shut off cable 10, 15 years ago. I just don't want that. It's propaganda. I do not want it in my living room. And on page 40, I think it's page 45, you say the fourth estate, I can't even talk.
Yeah.
The fourth estate, the media has a sacred duty, and everybody listen to this. The media has a sacred duty to give us all the facts that are required for a healthy democracy to thrive. And that means telling the whole story if their stated objective is the news. We don't have news anymore. We really
No,
don't.
no.
So you have to find your information. You have to dig, you have to listen, you have to talk. You have to go hunt for it. You cannot turn on the TV and just have some person with a lot of hairspray in her hair telling us what's going on.
But and if you do watch TV, you can't just watch one channel.
No, no, not
You
even.
have to. It's like when I first started racing sailboats, there was no GPS, and we always had somebody on board that was really good at navigating. And they would listen to radio stations. When we raced the first time over from Miami to Cat Key at night, this guy's down below, getting triangulating the radio stations, radio towers to know where we were, to find the truth of where we were on the water. And that's what you have to do today. You have to be curious. You have to question it, and you have to look at other sources. There's so many times I'll have a conversation with somebody and I'll mention something and go, well, that can't be true. Well, it turns out it is true, but on your outlet, they're not telling you that. A half truth is still a lie.
Good point. It really is. And again, I'm going to say it loud and proud, it's all propaganda.
Yeah. No, unfortunately.
Yeah, and this is not new. This has been going on for a very long time.
Well, it's been going on really since Washington's second term. Um,
Okay, give me some examples. And I
well,
believe you. I
Jefferson,
think I know what you're talking about.
yeah, Jefferson and Madison were mad at Washington because he wanted to make it a more of a centralized government, and they wanted to have the states have more control. And this is in my memory, so it could be foggy. But one of the things that along the way, through a third party, where they would write these articles under different names, and suggested that George Washington was an agent of Great Britain. You know, it's just that kind of lying just destroys trust. Can I look you in the eye, and when you say yes, I'm going to, you do.
And and what you're talking about there is actually responsible citizenship, and it does require a lot of us. We
Yeah,
have to get out of our silo. Habitat for Humanity is a great example.
mm,
Neighborhood cleanups, volunteering at the hospital, volunteering at pet
right,
clinics. You know,
right.
when I can, I volunteer to walk dogs. I have my own dog,
Mhm.
but if I'm out and about, I'll stop by, one of these shelters and say, "Show me the oldest dog that's out here, and, I'll go sit with it." But it's just we have to get out of our own silo, and I let's talk more about that because I love that word, how you describe that. Why does this matter more than people think? And why do they just kinda go, "Oh, I'll do it tomorrow?"
Well, because it's easy to turn on the TV and turn off your mind. That's why people don't do it. It seems safer, but you're deteriorating yourself and you're deteriorating your community. Um, Trust comes from shared experiences, working together, and you can't build trust watching TV or going down your favorite apps rabbit hole. And part of it is in going out in the community, you're going to learn. You're going to hear stuff that you have no idea that you would never have heard otherwise, and you'll understand other people's needs, and that allows the democracy to work. So you can, because you're willing to compromise, you're willing to listen to the other side and come to a conclusion. So many of the things that we're wrestling with in this country, we're not resolving, that need to be resolved, because no one will sit down at the table and say, what's best for the country today and in the long run? And that is why getting out, it starts with us individually. I wrote a poem, if I could read it. It kind of speaks to this.
Sure.
It's called Micro Validations. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. English proverb. Microclimates, microbiomes, microaggressions. We live in a microclimate. Microbiomes live in us. Microaggressions are part of life. What we need more of are micro validations, micro affirmations. We've become trapped in our own silos. Become contemptuous of those who don't agree with us. They must not be human. Our country, our cities, our friends have become divided. We can't keep distancing ourselves from each other. We must all hang together, or most assuredly we'll hang separately. Benjamin Franklin. Our children, our grandchildren, need us to hang together for their future. A healthy democracy requires its citizens to work together to remain free. We need to see our interdependence, and we need to break down the barriers that divide us. We need each other. Start with micro-validations. Open the door for someone and say hello. How about your neighbors? Look people in the eye and acknowledge they exist. Reconnect with each other. Affirm the humanness in everyone.
Will you do me a favor and send me a copy of that?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to post it everywhere. And I just wrote down micro-validations. That's not something I ever thought of. And honestly, and people say, well, Denise, you're an introvert. How do you get to meet people? Well, on this podcast is one. But I do go out. I do go out into the air. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not locked in the house, but, I'll have fascinating conversations with people in the grocery store of all
Yeah,
places. You just never know.
right. And
Then
and
I
when
go
you have
home and I recharge. So
and when you have that conversation, you acknowledge their humanness. You
exactly.
acknowledge that they exist, and you acknowledge that you can learn something from them. And I did a podcast with a local podcast here, and I told Joe Hamilton, he's got St. Pete X, I learned something from everybody. Sometimes it's what not to do, but I learned something from everybody.
I do too. But, honestly, and I like people just fine as long as they're on the other side of the door. We get along just fine that way. But yeah, it's interesting when you can have a conversation just and I'll give you an example. Years ago, many years ago, I was in Albertsons of all places. So I'm not sure it's anywhere else in the United States, but it's a grocery chain here. And there was this woman, older woman, she was probably in her early 80s, and she was just lovely. And she was right in front of me in the line. And I looked at her and she reminded me of my mom, what I thought my mom would look like as she got older. She had on this beautiful little outfit, little crop pants and a little cute little shirt that went with it. Her hair was perfectly coiffed. She
Mhm.
was, and her nails were done. She was manicured. She was beautiful. And I looked down at her feet. I'm a nerd in stilettos. And I went, oh, those are the cutest shoes. They were these glittery little sandals.
Uh-huh.
And when she got through, I said, don't leave. I want to talk with you because she was in front of me. And so, I got my groceries. We took our buggies in the deep south. They're called buggies. And we went to the edge of the store and we talked for an hour.
Right.
Beautiful little Cajun woman. I've never seen her before or since. So many years ago, she is still part of my heart. She was lovely to talk to. She talked
And
about
you
my city when it was, because we live around a bunch of rivers, and we
mhm.
claimed that the roads were just where the cows walked. We just paved those because you never know where you're gonna wind up. But I've never forgotten her.
Yeah. No, and yeah, how many years ago was that?
Probably 15, maybe longer.
Right. Right. No, that was a gift that you gave each
Yeah,
other.
that's what I think. So
And what's one of the things that's challenging now is if you read the research, something like 25% of the people don't know any of their neighbors. Don't know any. And that's awful.
didn't
Um,
used to be that way, did it?
no, no. And moving from Palm Springs to Chicago my senior year of high school, I learned something neat about the Midwest, upper Midwest, and that is when it snows and there's an ice storm and electricity's out and trees have fallen down and you can't get out of the driveway, you help each other. You you get together and help each other remove the tree. You cut firewood. You make sure your neighbor has enough firewood to keep themselves warm. That's working together. In California, the only thing we had to do is, put the garage door up, put the garage door down, and go inside and make sure the air conditioning is working.
Right. And
We
what you're talking about, we do the same after a hurricane, because when the
Yes,
power goes, the food's gonna go bad quickly. It
right,
just is.
right.
You can put a generator in there, but do you really wanna save $200 worth of food, or do you wanna keep everything else moving? And we will literally have street fairs, not street fair, but a street meal. We all gather, maybe 3 streets down, 3 streets back. We all gather. We know we're gonna do it. We put we nobody can drive through our neighborhoods because everything's down, but we put out tables. Everybody brings their big, you know, grills that they haul behind a truck. We feed everybody, and we get to know each other all over again.
Can I tell you about a really interesting experience I had in New York?
Yeah.
I was flew in from Toronto late at night, got to my hotel, and I had an early morning meeting, and put in the hotel to wake me up at 6 or whatever, 7. And I wake up and it's in the middle of summer. It's hot. I looked at my watch and oh God, it was like 9 o'clock. And I picked up the phone, dead, turned on the water, no water because there was pump water up on the roof. Well, there was no electricity. It was a blackout. And I put on my sneakers and uh, walked out into the hallway, which was totally dark. And this guy said, "Follow me." And, the voice, because sort of a shadow. And we found the stairways, and there was a few candles on the stairway. I went out and I walked around New York. I was staying in Lexington at about 56th, and all the restaurants had done just what you said. They pulled their gas ovens out on the sidewalk. Were cooking the food they have and giving it away. People were sitting on their porch, talking to each other. It's that kind of experience that brings us together. In fact, there was a book read about people. I think it was teens, but he talked about how after World War II, during World War II, whether you were royalty or a butcher, you stayed in the same bomb shelter together. You helped dig out people from bombed out buildings. And then he said, after the war, we went back to our, class structure. And he said, maybe we need to have a war every 5 or 6 years just to remind us that we're all in this together.
Right. Or a hurricane, which we do get frequently
Right.
down here.
Yeah.
But and those are the things that stick with you. That's when you realize, yeah, we're all neighbors. I don't know many of my neighbors. I do know my next door neighbor. In fact, she took me to the hospital when I shattered
Mm.
my shoulder, thank goodness. But we are isolated, and I
Yeah.
wonder why we're so deliberately isolated. What are we afraid of? And listen, just because I'm an introvert and I am a card-carrying introvert doesn't mean I don't say hi when I'm talking to with the dog outside. I talk with my by the way, my dog, every once in a while, she's better than Jim Cantor. She is. I call her meteorologist Hannah Griffiths. She can tell me when a storm's coming. I don't need to ask anybody. There's a storm coming. And if I don't get her out of the backyard quick enough, I mean, she may have been out there 5 minutes and she'll dig out. The neighbors know her very well, and I'll hear a knock on the door. Here's Hannah. Thank you. Yeah, they don't know me because they never see me out there, but they sure know my dog. And that's
Well,
what community is all about, right?
yes, yes. And just a little sidebar: when the tsunami hit in oh, it was a nation that had the big tsunami about 10 years ago that so many people got killed.
I thought it was Sri Lanka, but I don't think so. But I
It
know
was
what you're talking
in
about.
that area.
Well,
Apparently, all the wild animals headed for the hills.
and you
They knew
watch
it was
them.
coming
Yep.
before it came.
Watch your pets. They can tell you just about
Yeah,
anything that you need to know.
yeah.
I'll watch my cats and they'll be, sitting on a table where they're not supposed to be, but they don't care. And they'll be looking at a ceiling fan because in the deep south, if you don't have ceiling fans, you're going to die. I'm going to tell you right now.
That's
And they're in
right.
every single room. And they'll be staring up there. I've got two giant gingers and they'll brothers, and they'll be just looking up there. And I'm thinking either I've got spiders or there's an alien up there or God. I don't know. I'm gonna go with God. Somebody's listening to me, but yeah, watch your pets. They know way more than we do about things that are happening in the world. Not, the material world, but the world. If you're sick, they know. If there's
Yes.
something I've got one cat, she's 18 years old and she's dying. She's got heart failure. And one of my giant gingers will just go and sit next to her, and they never have done that before, but all of a sudden they're best buddies.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Also, one of the things during that tidal wave tsunami was that some of the domesticated pets did not react. They'd been domesticated for so long, for so many generations, they didn't have the same um, senses as the wild ones.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I know when I lived way out in the country, I lived on a lake. If I wanted to know what was going on anywhere around me, I'd watch where the cows were.
Right.
Honestly, I could tell if it was gonna rain, if if the lake was gonna flood. I knew. I just what the cows would tell us what was going on, and we all knew. And all of a sudden, we'd be passing little notes around the houses, "You better lock up, you better do this," just keep an eye out. And we did. We took those cows very seriously. But I don't
You know,
take people seriously. I should, but I don't.
well, we're so insulated. We're insulated from reality. The fact is, when you went back to the hunters and gatherers, they had to have the same instincts that the animals have. But as we become,
True, true.
air conditioning is a great example of how we are able to bend reality. And bending reality eventually you lose touch with reality
It
and
does,
take
and
and take it for granted.
yeah, it is easy. I know when I hurt my shoulder, I didn't hurt it, I shattered it, and the
Yeah.
air conditioner was down at the same time. I was pretty sure I was gonna die. I was just gonna give in and go. But and
Get
then I
me
got
out of here.
yeah, I mean, I got heat rash on my body. I was so hot. But but I remember thinking, because 'cause I'm in the deep South, you're in the South as well. Before air conditioning, how in the world did they populate this state? It had to have been spousal rape. There's no woman in her right mind with 9 kids and heavy clothing going, "Sure, come on, big boy." I woulda killed him. I mean, think about that. So, that may be why
Well,
we're having a population decline. Air conditioning,
yes. Well, yeah, and the cold winter nights.
right?
You know,
I think we've gone way far away where we were gonna go. But I
the
want Go ahead, I'm sorry.
the one thing that I wanted, we're talking about trust earlier, and I heard this quote that I just think is so important, and it's today and what's going on in our country. It is truth and justice are the immune system for society. When suppressed, all the social ills will show up.
Say that
Truth,
again, that's important.
truth and justice are the immune system for society. When suppressed, all the social ills will show up. And
Truth
we're
and
living that right now. And
we
justice
are.
isn't
Yeah.
equality that we think, no, justice is you pay the price for your crimes. You pay the price for what you do, good and then of course you do good. You don't have to pay the price, um, but truth, which we were just talking about, the politicians earlier, they can say lies. They all do at some level, and they get away with it, and we
And
let
they
them get
forget
away with
that the internet is forever. They don't care.
it. Yeah.
I'm just astonished by people who will say and do something and then 10 days later say the opposite, and then but we heard it, we saw it. What the heck?
Well, they say the opposite if the other side agrees with them.
That's
Then they
exactly
say,
right.
"Oh God, we agree. Stop. I don't believe that anymore."
Yeah,
And I
it's
always love it when the politicians have this bad history, and then they say, "Well, they've learned and they're not that way anymore."
no, they haven't.
Come on.
Mm-mm. No, 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 no. To me, and this is just a personal observation, I've been watching politics since I was a kid. My parents were very, very interested in it, and we met a lot of local politicians
Mhm.
and a governor or 2, and I was always the quiet one in the house. I got to hear a lot of things that my parents didn't really want me to hear, and they paid for that later, but they would just forget I was in the room because I was quiet. And, you know It was interesting, and I would watch these people, and I've observed this even now. Back in the day, I used to think, "Boy, they must really be smart because they were articulate, they were educated, they were persuasive." Now they can say just, spout any old crap and people believe it, and it's crap, it's garbage. They're not even trying to be articulate or educated or, smarter than the next guy. There's something wrong with politicians, I think. In many of them, I think they're missing that ethics gene. There's a lack of humanness about them. So, to say that
Well,
I don't like politicians is, you know, putting it politely.
yeah, and believe it or not, there's probably 10%, 20% that are really good people.
Exactly, but they're so
I
rare.
right, if you notice on the back of my book, 2 former congressmen, endorsed my book, one Republican, one Democrat,
Yeah, I saw that.
and we were having lunch, and these are really good guys, and they'd say, "You get elected, you're all excited, you're gonna go up there and, make the world a better place," and the party brings you in and says, "Well, pal, one of 2 things, you can do what we tell you to do, or you can have no effect."
Yep, and I'm afraid yeah, I've always known that to be the case. I mean, that's gone on in any w I'm gonna just say it. In any room where you have more than 3 people, 2 of them are gonna be lying to you, maybe all 3, and they're going to one up each
And are you
other.
one of them? You said there's 3 people.
Yeah, could be. Yeah, I may spin a yarn, I don't know. But I tend not to lie because I can't remember them. It's just too much energy. But I wanted to tell. We've got about 10 more minutes. I wanted to ask you, if as a personal example, has there been a moment in your own life, or maybe on this journey, where you sat down with someone who saw the world completely different than you, and it actually changed how you think about certain things or a thing?
Yes, on a number of occasions. I put together this group. It didn't last for long 'cause, COVID came. But we would get together, people across political parties. We would come together in a room once a month and just talk. I had a hard time getting them to be really honest. This is during the, Clinton-Trump race. It started before that and then came to that. And I had a Muslim come and explain to us why women don't need to drive, and we take care of our women, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
Um, but we had the head of the Urban League in St. Pete, a very fine gentleman. And, I look at, I grew up in Southern California. There was no, you grew up in the South where separate but equal was considered correct, which we know was not. Um, and, I think we've made a lot of progress, in race relations and seeing the humanness in each other. And then one of my good friends who, uh, is white said, "Maybe we see it through our eyes, but if you still walk in a room and people make you feel uncomfortable, not necessarily you make yourself feel uncomfortable." And I do know there's still prejudiced people out there who will say ridiculous things to people. Maybe we've come a distance, but we still have a ways to go. And that really made me think because we need each other, period. Black, white, purple, green. And when we spend energy looking down on a group or thinking we're more superior or they have this or they have that, it's counterproductive.
Well, you lose sight of who you are as a human.
Yeah,
I mean, you
right,
don't even know who you are anymore because you're
right.
so busy comparing or complaining or, as you said, looking down. That's just not healthy.
Yeah. But that was I remember sitting in the room. There was probably about 12 of us in the room around this big table, and I was facilitating it because I was the founder. And it was kinda like, I didn't expect him to say that, but he really has a good point. That's really interesting because I was on the board of the Urban League in Central Florida for 7 years, and feel like we're making all this progress, but not so fast for some people. And I think part of it is also our welfare system, which keeps people down. Do you
Well,
have any
that's
comments
deliberate.
on this?
Oh, yeah, but that's
Mm.
absolutely deliberate, and I'm going to go back to, I believe it was LBJ when he started what was the great something or another.
Great society.
Yeah, that should have never happened, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, it was. It's one of those marks. I just listened to a really interesting podcast about charity, and there's this line. You've heard this, I'm sure. Give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach him to fish, you feed him for life.
Exactly.
Our welfare system is give a man a fish, and we'll feed him today and tomorrow. And pretty soon they become dependent, and they don't believe that they can take care of themselves.
They don't want to. It's up to us to take care of them.
Right.
And I don't care
And
what color you are. You can be green with
oh,
chartreuse stripes. I don't care. If you've
right.
got that sense of entitlement, you're kind of lost.
Which happens with really wealthy kids
Yeah,
and happens with poor people on welfare. I can remember um, back when there were payphones, this lady screaming over the phone that the government owed her this, this, and this, and this. I'm looking at her thinking, well, first of all, you're about 3 times overweight, so you don't need to eat anytime soon. And second of all, we
take a
are the,
walk and burn it off.
yeah, right. Just no, the government doesn't owe us anything. The
No,
government owes us what we agree as a society, and what we work together to make the government work so we can all prosper. I mean, we have a homeless problem here in St. Pete. I believe in working with the homeless, helping them get off the street. I don't think we should let them stay on the street and pass out in the middle of the street, and sleep in the park. But
no, we have a veterans problem and they're winding up there too. And that
yeah,
just breaks
exactly.
my heart.
Yeah. And so, how can we help them, but not give them so much help that they don't have to do anything? Wasn't there a thing about putting sand in when your kid's bed at some point in time, or doing something to get them to not come home or
Oh,
lock the door? You know,
my
that
mother
they,
my mother saw that. She used to tell us because we were a large family, and she said, "Okay, when the last kid's out, I'm moving." And I got she did. She sold the house, built a much smaller house that had 2 bedrooms, and she was not gonna let any of us ever move back in. She had done her job, she had equipped us, and we had to go. That was all there was to it.
and
And I
that's how
got
it should be.
I know, that's what I think. When a baby bird leaves the nest, its mama's not hovering over it saying, come back." It's saying, "Bye-bye, good job, go." But I get this panicked phone call from my sister. She's like, "I can't find mom." Now, my sister is a very pragmatic person, but she was heavily pregnant with like a 12-pound baby. I'm not joking.
Oh,
So I would have been
wow.
hysterical too. And I said, "What do you mean you can't find her?" "I went to her house. She's not answering her phone, and I went to her house and it's empty." I said, she sold it." And she said, "She what?" She'd forgotten. I said, she built a new house." "Oh, yeah." She had to go to the new house to find my mom. But she said she meant it. She hates us, and she was hysterical. She doesn't wanna ever have us to come back. She doesn't want us moving back in. "You're gonna be fine."
Well,
And
at least she told you where she moved.
she did.
They move and don't tell them where they're moving.
And I said, "You didn't hear her say this? I live 2 states away, and I knew she had moved, so come on." And that's still one of the funniest stories. "She moved, and I don't know where she is." "Yes, you do. She's over there on Hillside. Go." It was funny. And my sister says, "No, I never said that." "Yeah, you did. You really did." So but, she was hormonal, so she had her reasons, but
Give
still.
her a break, right?
Yeah, I do, but I bring it up every once in a while just, because 'cause I'm a sister. We do that. Okay, this is something I wanted to talk with you about before we run out of time, the national service idea. And this is one idea that I think is going to get people talking because you're proposing required national service for 18-year-olds, either the CCC, and I'm not sure what that is, or the
Sure.
military. What do you mean by that?
Well, two things. First of all, the CCC is the Civilian Conservation Corps.
Oh, okay.
It was created during the Depression by FDR. Um, and when I was traveling, I realized how many things were built by the CCC. We were in Boise, Idaho, which is where Albertsons came from, if you want to know where they were centered.
Uh-huh. I like
Um,
Albertsons, one of my favorite stores.
yeah, and we were walking on this reservoir, and there was a little statue, weather beaten, CCC, I think it was 1936. They had built that reservoir that took accumulated water so they could farm that valley. That valley had not ever been farmed until they built that. National parks, when we were in Alexandria, were built by the CCC. When we were in Alexandria, Virginia, or Alexandria, Minnesota, where my wife was born, I noticed that on the county building was built by the WPA, which is part of the same program. Big, beautiful stone building, 1930 something. We don't realize how much they did. And I believe that the people who did that felt they had some equity in the country. An Air Force general once said, nobody ever watched and rent a car. I think there's a lot of people that think they're living and renting in the United States and they have no equity in the success of it. My
Right. I would not have thought of it like that, but that's a brilliant point.
my 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 wish, but I don't think we could ever get it done, is that everybody would serve in the military for a year or two. But I'm just trying to get 1 year, graduate from high school. You, if you're from Louisiana, you go to Chicago. If you're from Chicago, you go to Biloxi, Mississippi, and serve for a year, starting out with a basic boot camp with some civics, some team building with people from across the country that are different from you. So you have this, you begin to break down these barriers and these assumptions that we think we know what everybody in Chicago is like. We think we know what everybody in Biloxi is like. We don't. And it helps making other people human. Then you would do initial projects as a team, recycling all the things that are along the road, or doing some public service thing, rebuilding a school, building a house, and then if possible,
Learning how to work.
learning how to work, learning how to work. And I guarantee you that 18-year-olds, when they came out the other side as 19, would be more ready for college, more ready for knowing what they want to do. Maybe it's not college. Um, they'd be better citizens. We know that I haven't looked at the number recently, but it was around 60 countries have required military service.
I think Germany's one of them, aren't they?
Germany has it on the books. They've had some problems with the people protesting, but
Uh,
the Netherlands, Korea, South Korea, and North Korea, um, uh, Israel is probably one of the better known ones. Switzerland,
mhm. Right.
um, and what we find, if you study it, their cultures, the people are more connected to each other. When when Singapore, I think it was in the 50s, was abandoned by the British, maybe in the late 40s. They had a very diverse island: Chinese, Hindus, British, all sorts of Indians, and they realized that they were very vulnerable. So they put together and have, and still do, have mandatory military service. And I saw a video, and I can't find it. I've been trying to find it, where some of the people who were in it together 40 years ago at the time talked about how they would never have spoken to a Sikh. They never would have spoken to a Chinese person if they hadn't had to serve together. And now they are lifelong friends and they're connected. That's the first part of being part of a country, being part of a society, is you have to connect and see the humanness in each other, breaking down barriers, building sweat equity in the country. That's the big benefit of universal service. I've taken mandatory out of it because universal service doesn't sound so threatening, but it's the same thing, same package.
And see, I don't disagree with you on any of that because my brothers were in the service. I've known a lot of people who have served,
Mhm.
and they don't forget it. They
Mm.
really don't forget it. It's just it becomes part of their humanity, if you will.
It builds a character.
It does, it really does, and I like the idea of a year, and then you can, go more if you want to, but
Yeah.
do you get a lot of pushback from them?
We're so new to this. I've had some interesting conversations. General Stanley McChrystal, who spent 9 years trying to get it across the goal line, it was required military service when he started. But so far, I have not gotten the momentum that I hope. I'm
Is
looking
he the
forward.
one that says, "Make your bed"?
I think so. I don't remember that part of it, but are you familiar with Braver Angels?
No.
Yeah, look it up. It's an organization that's trying to get people to talk about across political lines. Having a group of Republicans and a group of Democrats talk about
Right, right. I'll go look
them.
that up.
And I did a paper with former Congressman Dennis Ross on national service, and it was presented in or put into their book in Philadelphia a couple of weeks ago. I wasn't able to go, and he wasn't able to go because of conflicts and deliver the paper. But we're trying to get it out there, and it's not going to happen next week. But
No.
I have a philosophy of, you and I talk, we decide to work together. You and I talk to different people instead of two of us. So there's four of us, then there's eight of us, then there's 16 of us, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to push
You're
all
compounding.
compound, and I'm
Right.
still relatively in the the launch stage, but I got to start someplace.
You do, and listen, I mentioned this in the green room earlier. I knew this conversation was probably going to go off kilter because that's how I operate. So, it's
Your
just
fault.
this is my fault. I I admit it is because I'm like, "Ooh, let's talk about this," and off we go. But I would love for you to come back in the new year. Right now, I'm booked all the way through October, as I mentioned, but I would love to come back and go deeper into the book and, maybe learn what's going on with what you're talking about with national service, because I think it's a great idea. I mean, I really do, because you don't know what you don't know. You don't know who you don't know. And
Right.
until you go do it, and you need to have some work ethic, and it may have to be because you're in the military and you're being taught work ethic, or the
Yeah.
CCC, which you're helping other people. That does change who you are. So I'm not going to push back on that idea at all. But I do want you to come back in the new year if you would.
I'd be delighted.
Okay, good. Well, listen, we're about to run out of time, and this is where I have to say goodbye. So, Chip, as we wrap up, if someone only remembers one thing from this conversation or takes one step after hearing it, what would you like that to be?
Start with small micro validations. Open
I
the
wrote
door
that
for
down.
someone,
That's
and
going up on my whiteboard.
okay, and say hello to people, look people in the eye, and volunteer. Get off the couch, turn off the TV, turn off the computer, hell, turn off your cell phone, and go out and build a house, paint a house, clean up a beach with people different than you, and you will have a bigger, broader world, and you will feel better about yourself and you'll feel more healthy, I promise.
Yep, you will. Where can people connect with you and where can they find your book?
The book is on Amazon, Unity and Service, A Pathway to Responsible Citizenship. I just had it produced as a audiobook. So it's also an audiobook, so you don't have to read it. You can listen to it. And you can reach me at chip@unityandservice.org. And my website is unityandservice.org.
Got it. Well, Chip, thank you again. This was a conversation that I think people are going to sit with for a while. And you've given us a lot to think about, and I've been taking a lot of notes. And more importantly, you've given us something to actually go do. I appreciate you. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate the 50 states worth of listening that you did to bring this conversation to us today. and I look forward to having you come back soon.
Thank you.
Okay, now let me tell everybody what this was about. My guest today, Chip Webster, is longtime Vista, Florida leader and founder in Unity and Service, and he joined the show to talk about what's really broken in American democracy and what citizens can do about it. And Chip argued that media and political incentives, not the public itself, are driving the country's division, and I do believe that. And that the fix starts with individuals doing the work to vote thoughtfully and, more importantly, getting proximity to people outside of their political bubble through shared volunteer work. And he made the case for his boldest idea, a required year of national service, CCC or military, for 18-year-olds as a unifying rite of passage. And we close the conversation on his book, Unity in Service, A Pathway to Responsible Citizenship, and his nonprofit's mission to turn shared service into shared trust. So as always, if you find this episode and hundreds of other conversations with world-class experts at your Partner in Success Radio, share them and go find my guests. They are amazing people. So until next time rather, remember that success is not just about what you achieve, it's about who you become along the way. I'm Denise Griffitts. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. Again, Chip, thank you.